Welcome to Worldview 2's Washington Report for this September 25th, 2025. And I'm joined by Jim Paff of theconservativecaucus.org. Jim, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to see you tonight, Logan.
You as well. We have Trump met with the president of Turkey today. We have update on the ICE shooter. We have a lot to get to. But you sent over a clip here. Trump, while he was meeting with the president of Turkey, says he will not cave to Chuck Schumer's demands of $1 trillion for transgender surgeries for minors and healthcare for illegals, even if it prevents a shutdown. So the leftists are threatening a shutdown if he doesn't approve these fundings.
I mean, he is, and well, let me put it this way. Democrats believe that they actually really control this country. Well, why do they believe that? One evidence we have is the violence is taking place, that they're helping to, engender through their activities, their rancid activities, and screaming and yelling and calling Trump Hitler. They literally believe that they have to oppose Trump entirely, and they're trying to make sure every one of their supporters believes that Trump really is Hitler. So that's why they need to take these aggressive stands. One. Two, Democrats have always felt that they run Washington, D.C., no matter who's in control of Congress. This is a very similar disagreement that has happened in years past. In the past, Republicans have always caved into their desires. And you've got the threat of my friend Russ Vought, OMB director, is going to actually permanently remove employees if there's a government shutdown. And there are provisions in the law that allow him to do this. So, but they don't want to concede to that. I think it's a brilliant move to take it on. I've always been of the opinion. I worked on Capitol Hill for 8 years and worked around D.C. in politics for a good 15. And I have to tell you that I do not mind government shutdowns. We are not harmed. We always have our necessary services taken care of, the military, and even Social Security and some of these programs are going to be just fine. Democrats want to win. I think Donald Trump is taking the right move to send a strong signal. We're not going to fund trans surgeries. You can forget it. Democrats have the most radical agenda of any party in the developed world right now. It is a super radical agenda. I mean, it's kind of bad enough in Europe. I think Democrats here are much worse. And this is just, one more evidence of it. Not to mention the fact that their language is inspiring people to kill others like Charlie Kirk and ICE agents almost.
Yeah. And it actually came out, I was going to show this, that the shooter that was targeting the ICE facility was using an app. The Dallas shooter was using apps that tracked ICE agents. Democrats endorse these apps and are trying to remove face masks for ICE agents.
And these apps have been around for a while. We've known about this. This is the first time that there's been critical evidence that proves that someone was using it for nefarious purposes. Now, there might be other investigations with other acts of violence, and there's lots of them that are being perpetrated on ICE agents, but this was a killing directly related to that app. That app was created by and promoted by Democrats to go after ICE agents. Listen, I've been saying, and I've said it on here a few times in other interviews, that the Democrats have a tangential culpability, the terminology I'm using, in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Not directly involved, but at least tangentially culpable. To be candid, Democrat activists and any elected Democrat politician who was promoting this anti-ICE app now have some direct culpability to the murder of people. And they can't back off of it anymore. The violence that Democrats have promoted for years is now coming to roost upon them. And it's obscene and absurd for them to walk away with this without a sincere repentance, reprimand of themselves, and change of mind in this whole process. It has got to stop now. The Democrat Party the party operatives are increasingly becoming a violent party.
Yep. And talking about that, we have breaking news. The former FBI director James Comey has been indicted for obstruction of justice and making false statements per ABC.
Good news. I mean, one of the things that you're hearing out there right now from Democrats is, oh my gosh, now Donald Trump, this is unprecedented. We have never had a president use the DOJ to go after their political opponents. But this is a pattern with Democrats. And this is why I keep saying they are a Maoist communist party. That they don't go to the extent of killing people directly just yet, but they do go to the place of trying to have an overthrow of culture and an overthrow of politics if they can. Here are Democrats who have used government resources whenever they were in power to literally go after a massive number of their political opponents. Consistently, persistently. In fact, I'm going to be going to a preview of a movie that's coming out soon called God Complex, which has key interviews of some of the major people who have researched the censorship industrial complex. Their censorship industrial complex was designed to shut people down. Everything they do politically is designed to intimidate and to thwart their political opponents. They're even attempting as best they can to rig the rules of elections to favor them and to scream and yell when you don't do that. Harmeet Dillon now has a successful lawsuit going up, I think, to the Supreme Court that it is about the fact that there are states that are not allowing the release of their voter files. And they must do that by law, particularly to people who will be involved in politics. I mean, there's just an obscene number of things that I can point to, but it goes right to the point. Don't call James Comey's indictment some sort of vengeance indictment. This man has committed crimes, it seems to me, and he should be indicted because we need to find out if he's actually guilty of those in a court of law. This is a normal part of the process. So Democrats destroy everything that they can, and then when anyone comes back to try to fix the problems that they created, then they are the ones Democrats will blame for causing chaos in our political culture and our culture in general. Well, it's the Democrats who have caused this chaos. Donald Trump hasn't caused chaos. Donald Trump, for all the quirky things that people don't like about him or whatever, that they're not used to, has not caused harm to this culture. It is Democrats who have done that. And it's guys like Barack Obama who did it sitting in the president's seat. You know, he comes across in some ways rational, reasonable, not over the top. He's certainly not as scary a person on the political stage as someone like Donald Trump. Well, listen, you can be nice on the outside. The problem is the corruption's very deep on the inside. Obama is guilty of much of this stuff too. There is no reason we should not prosecute the kind of crimes that have been committed against our political process, against the American people, and against many Republicans with lawfare to try to throw them in jail to keep them from gaining power. Donald Trump thankfully had the courage to stick through this. He deserves, even beyond his life term, he deserves to be praised for the kind of courage it took to hopefully get us back on track. This is one step in that process. It's not the only one, and there need to be many more indictments because real crimes have been committed against the American people.
Yep. And here he is today doing another thing to get rid of the leftists and the really terrorist organizations. He signed a presidential memorandum to dismantle left-wing organizations like BLM and Antifa.
Lastly, sir, this is a presidential memorandum on countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. In recent weeks, months, and years, we've seen a tremendous upsurge in some highly visible, but also other acts of domestic terrorism and organized political violence being perpetrated by radical, politically motivated groups all over the country. What this presidential memorandum will do is set off an administration-wide response to that, ranging from the Joint Terrorism Task Force resources to other components of the Department of Justice, to the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Treasury. We're looking at interdicting these groups, preventing them from performing acts of violence, and also looking at sources of organization and funding and support that prop them up and allow them to do the acts that they have been doing.
We're looking at the funders of a lot of these groups, and you know, when you see the signs, and they're all beautiful signs made professionally, these aren't your protesters that make the sign in their basement late in the evening because they really believe it. These are anarchists and agitators, professional anarchists and agitators, and they get hired by wealthy people, some of whom I know, I guess, you know, I probably know them. And you wouldn't know it. You're at dinner with them, everything's nice, and then you find out that they funded millions of dollars to these lunatics. Steve, could you say a couple of words about it?
Yes, Mr. President. This is a very historic and significant day. This is the first time in American history that there is an all-of-government effort to dismantle left-wing terrorism, to dismantle Antifa, to dismantle the organizations that have been carrying out these acts of political violence and terrorism. What we have seen, if you look at whether it be going back to the riots that started with Black Lives Matter and all the way through to the Antifa riots, the attacks on ICE officers, the doxing campaigns, and now the political assassinations, these are not lone, isolated events. This is part of an organized campaign of radical left terrorism. It is structured, it is sophisticated, it is well funded, it is well planned. There is really no parallel like this to anything else in the country right now. There is an entire system of feeder organizations that provide money, resources, weapons, and when they're attacking ICE officers, they're attacking federal buildings, or they're isolating public officials for harassment, doxing, intimidation, and ultimately attempted assassination. It is all carefully planned, executed, and thought through. It is terrorism on our soil. Because of this executive order, Cash and Pam are going to have the tools they need, working with Scott, to take these organizations apart piece by piece. And the central hub of that effort is going to be the Joint Terrorism Task Force, or JTTF, which sits inside the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But for those at home who are worried about terrorism in this country, they need to understand, because of President Trump's strength, because of his vision, because of his leadership, we are now going to use the entire force of the federal government to uproot these organizations root and branch. And again, that's only possible because of President Trump and his leadership.
There you go.
It's
and like
a
you said,
cartel.
he called out groups like George Soros there as well.
Yeah. Listen, that we already know that there is money going from George Soros organization, Open Society Foundations, to groups that are committing these acts, not only of crime, and there's some criminal activity apparently involved with it, but just the chaotic type of political intimidation that is happening that may or may not be criminal in and of itself. But there are criminal activities coming out of this. It is a conspiracy to hold on to and obtain power on a consistent basis, utilizing our laws, particularly free speech laws and free demonstration laws, to twist and turn our political process by causing political opponents fear of harm. And that needs to be investigated. Wherever there are criminal violations here, they need to aggressively go after it. Democrats, after the murder of Charlie Kirk, after the obvious leftist anti-ICE intent of this shooting in Dallas this week, they should very quickly be shutting down every bit of this process. They should, and by the way, I wouldn't encourage the Trump administration, if they did, to stop investigating, but they definitely need to stop this process. Democrats are culpable in this area. They are behind much of this problem. And I'm not talking about Democrat voters. Again, I want to be very clear. There were millions of Democrat voters who voted for Donald Trump, and most Democrat voters are not on the side of this sort of thing. They hate this kind of violence. But there is a cadre of about a quarter of Democrat voters, at least according to polls, who really are for this kind of violence. And look at the myriad of people who were praising the murder of Charlie Kirk in the days after his demise. There is a strain of politics in this country that is far too large that is involved in these things. Democrats should stop trying to beat up on Donald Trump over the CR that's going on. They should be spending all their time in front of the camera, repenting of this behavior and getting it right quickly as possible. If they will not, Donald Trump needs to proceed with full aggressive effort to get indictments and convictions.
Yep. And we'll be right back after this break.
We have a big announcement, folks. It's called Bella Melt. In the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you we've talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel.
MelissaHouseBG.com just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 fast action.
All right, welcome back from the break. Jim, I'm just waiting to hear from the Democrats screaming about indicting James Comey, but they're going to be yelling about Trump weaponizing the DOJ and the FBI. But that's basically what they're indicting him for, is weaponizing the DOJ or the FBI to go after Trump.
No, that's exactly right.
Lies, proven lies.
Yeah, listen, they're in the middle of an investigation where, to my knowledge, there are actual documents available that show communications from the Trump DOJ with Merrick Garland and his underlings coordinating with Letitia James, coordinating down in Georgia for that lawsuit. And we already know for a fact that Jack Smith was illegally put into a special prosecutor position in violation of the clear law on the books that led to the Mar-a-Lago raid and those federal potential indictments that fell flat on their face. They didn't go anywhere because they were false and fake. There has been a lawfare in this country. The abuse of power in the Biden administration is breathtaking. We were all talking about it when it was taking place. But the reality is that Merrick Garland, with the authority given to him, assuming he was conscious to do it, of Joe Biden, were literally and illegally going after political opponents utilizing the justice system. We know that the censorship industrial complex, which is an entirely illegal act, there should be probably dozens or hundreds of people who should be going to jail for that. To shut down and to suborn the free speech of Americans, but through intimidation and through canceling out of from social media platforms and the media complex that's out there, the regular media complex. This is a morass of illegal activity that was taking place in our federal government for 4 years. They even announced it in press conferences. Jen Psaki was talking about how they were going to go after social media companies to get them to stop any opposing speech to the government from anyone who thought that the way that the government was handling COVID was improper. That is an absolute violation of the First Amendment and a violation of basic American rights. It's a criminal activity for anyone in the federal government to attempt to suborn the rights of American citizens. It has either a 2 or 5 year criminal penalty in jail and fines associated with it. Everybody that was involved in that way should be indicted to the fullest extent of the law. We cannot have censorship in our government anymore. People need to go to jail for that. This is not Donald Trump going after his political opponents. His political opponents are the ones that committed criminal acts and should be investigated for it and sent all the way to a court of law and maybe to jail under certain circumstances. We cannot let this go away. We have to stop this now, or we will not be able to restore our country to the place it needs to go. We got far too many people in this country by population, quarter of Democrats, as best I can tell, who are willing to continue this sort of thing. It's very third world. This is like Idi Amin minus the killings. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and he didn't just go after Trump. He also went after Flynn and later admitted basically to framing him. Watch this.
You look at this White House now, and it's hard to imagine 2 FBI agents ending up in the same room. How did that happen?
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration. The protocol, 2 men that all of us have perhaps increased appreciation for over the last 2 years. And in both of those administrations, there was process. And so if the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough, let's just send a couple guys over.
You look at this White House now.
So what you're seeing in that interview, which has been evident the whole time, many of us, again, have been pointing this out, is that James Comey, and this was almost within hours of Donald Trump's inauguration. I think it was within the first 36 hours of Trump's inauguration. He knew that things were getting up to speed, and he immediately took advantage of that situation, however right or wrong that organization and coordination should have been. He took advantage of that situation to violate the law. This is the FBI director at the time violating the law intentionally to put a man through hell who was not guilty at all into jail. Michael Flynn is an American patriot and a hero. He exposed much of what the problems were. And so anyway, the absurdity of all this is crazy. These people have such twisted minds, James Comey does, that they believe that they're the power brokers in this nation, and they're not. It's us, the people. We elect the president. You must submit to him. You have to show a clear violation of law to not submit to him, and there is a process for that, which we call whistleblower laws. If you think that there's something going on, but you don't get to determine if it's right or wrong. That's up to the president, who's ultimately responsible. So, and it's a little bit more detailed than that. But these people know that they were violating the law. They were attempting to do so under the nose of the American people, and their responsibility to us, hiding it in secret. This is another reason why I say, 90% of classified documents, or at least up to 90%, shouldn't be classified at all. Because they classify them for political, not really national security purposes. There's a real big problem with that as well. But it's obscene what these people were willing to do. You remember Joe Biden in his little discussion saying that he was threatening Ukraine with some money we were going to give them if they did not fire the prosecutor that was going to find out his illegality with Ukraine? I mean, these people have been brazen about it for a long period of time because the Republicans we elect in D.C. often are not willing to hold them accountable, although that has been changing in recent years with some excellent committee work. But also because they've been able to do it under the nose of the American people because it's hard to find out what they're doing, even with FOIA requests. So anyway, it's going to be a tough time over some period of months here as these things start to come out, but it's got to happen. We have to clean house now, or we have no hope for the future when a Democrat gets in that seat.
Probably. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
And I'm guessing Brennan might be next. We'll see. But
Brennan has even more guilt than James Comey in all of this. Just FYI.
Well, moving on to the one last topic we have here. there's been a group of, a large number of people who have been kind of taken up trying to fill the void that Charlie left and had been going to college campuses across the country to talk, just set up tables and allow people to come up and debate. And there's one, I think it's just a group of 2 kids who've been going to different college campuses, Cam Higbee, and he went to Tennessee State University, and this is how it unfolded.
Come on. Yo.
Oh, you better not, Blake. You better not.
Okay.
Bring the sign back.
We're gonna do like a little end live pre-game or post-game situation here. We have 500 people watching.
We've got 500 right here watching.
Look. Whoa. This is insane. What the heck? Oh my gosh.
Let's skip ahead a little bit here. They're hitting a car, and the police had to get them out of there. But here's what Tennessee State University put out. Today, a group of individuals unaffiliated with Tennessee State University appeared on campus without prior notice. In accordance with the university policy, any demonstration or protest activity requires advance approval and permitting. Campus police and staff responded promptly, and the individuals were escorted from the university grounds without incident. At all times, TSU students conducted themselves in a professional and respectful manner. I don't think that looked very professional and respectful.
Well, let me just make it even more clear. First of all, was there a requirement for them to register to do it? Maybe. I think that's possible. But when you have a free speech conscience about you just very lightly go and say, hey, let's do something different. As to how the students acted, there's nothing professional or respectful that took place in their response. By the way, there are other videos where it began with some very interesting discussions. No one was very much concerned. This is an historically black university that apparently has a very racist idea of how people can be treated when they come to campus, even if it's in a very innocent way like this was, even if it's innocently not handled in the proper manner. And, maybe they should have gotten permission. But here's the thing. They wouldn't have been given permission. That's one thing. Let's just point that out. And we know that they wouldn't have because of the response of this statement, which is an absurd statement. It's an outrageous statement. I mean, it is absurd what these people think. This is in the same spirit that Democrats have. They're going to shut you down and shut you out if they don't agree with you. That's not how it works in a free society. They are at fault for the overall incident because they should have been restraining their students and then not lying about their students being professional and respectful because they weren't in any shape or form. A handful were, by the way. There were some very respectful students, and those do deserve credit, but not what you just saw in that video. It was most of the people. In fact, I guarantee you the word got around campus. Someone was texting someone. Everyone went rushing down so that they could just hound them like they were. And that is, it's not quite a violent act, but it is a disruptive act that is inconsistent with basic courtesy and common sense.
Yep. Well, we're all out of time for tonight. I realized that we saved one story from yesterday and I forgot to go to it, but we'll have to get to it next week. But just a reminder, your website is theconservativecaucus.org, and we'll be back on Monday with a new episode. Till then, take care.
Tonight on the Worldview Report, as we reported yesterday, we had a rooftop shooter yesterday killed 2 migrants and wound others just after the funeral of Charlie Kirk. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, he's chairman of the Senate's Judiciary Committee. He issues a letter to the Trump administration